A lot of the tech companies sort of said they were kind of frustrated because their customers use maybe 20% of the utility of their technology. Basically, nobody is happy with the tech that they have. AI is changing everything, and one of the things that it's changing is that ability to really personalize across operations and guest experience.
How is tech transforming hospitality? What are the huge tech mistakes being made by STR operators? And what separates the brands that cut through from those who don't in the world of public relations? Jessica Gillingham from Abode Worldwide will be answering all these questions and more on today's Host Planet podcast. Jessica, thank you for joining us on the Host Planet podcast. Tell us about your book, Tech-Enabled Hospitality, and what inspired you to write it.
James, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's really good to be here again, because I know I was on your podcast when you started, but it's great to be here and to talk about the book. So the book is called Tech-Enabled Hospitality, and I'd love to say that it came from sort of a bright idea from me to write it, but I was actually approached by a business publisher called GoGampage about 18 months ago. And they said that they had explored the hospitality market and there basically wasn't many books about hospitality. So they asked if I would put together a proposal of what I thought would be a good book for the industry. And so I went away. I was really busy at the time. I was about to get married. I had a child doing GCSEs and a child doing A-levels, literally all in the same week. And, you know, when they sort of say, give a busy person a job, they get it done. But in my case, I think it was also, you know, I didn't think enough to say, no, that's a lot of work. I'm not going to take it on. I took it as a challenge. And as I work and have done for many years now in technology for hospitality, so short-term rental technology and also hotel technology. So I felt that a book that kind of needed to get out there really was about tech-enabled hospitality. So about how technology is changing the way that we provide hospitality. So I kind of went away and sort of thought about what is it that I'd love to talk about. And I wanted to look at it from two angles, operations and guest experience. So I went to GoGampage and I said, this is what I'd like to write about. And they said, fine, go ahead. And, you know, do your best and do it. So that's kind of the beginning, really. And within the book, I interviewed over 30 leaders across operators, so operators and also tech leaders. And actually, it's not just short-term rentals. I look at hospitality as a whole in terms of hotels and short-term rentals as well.
Just explain to us how the tech has developed in the hospitality space. I imagine we've gone from next to nothing to a lot in a fairly short space of time.
Absolutely, James. And in just the span of time that I've worked in the industry, it's just grown exponentially, the amount of solutions that are out there. I think one of the things that has been so sort of interesting to me, you know, speaking with all the leaders in the research of the book, has been around there is a sort of a divide across hospitality. And the divide isn't so much around, so you could call it a tech divide. And the divide isn't so much about, you know, budgets that the operators have or the size of the company. There is a real sort of divide in mindset when it comes to technology. So whether operators see it as a, you know, with strategic vision and have that kind of appetite to use technology to sort of improve what they're doing. So in a way, they're seeing it as an investment, or they see it as a cost and a kind of, we just need to fix that problem with that thing. So that's kind of the mind shift that we're seeing happening across hotels and short-term rentals in terms of operations. I mean, there's more to it than that. You know, there is the way that hospitality is being provided is changing, and tech is enabling that as well, which I just find really fascinating.
That's a really interesting takeaway, isn't it? That the direction is coming from the top, and it very much depends on the leader regarding whether the company's adapting or adopting technology or not. I imagine that's one of the key takeaways from the book. What are the other key takeaways that you got from the experience?
I think that one of the main key takeaway, which I was really surprised about, and I don't know why I was surprised, but I was. Every single leader talked about that hospitality is at the heart of hospitality. So even ones that were, they've developed tech that does all sorts of crazy and amazing things for companies, or they are, they are very much what they would consider tech-enabled operators. At the heart of it is human experience. And even if that human experience now requires or can require far less humans delivering it, it's still the human experience which is at the core of it. And every single person that I spoke to talked about that. They didn't talk about, slashing staff or automating in a way that wasn't about still providing the human experience. So I think that was what kind of surprised me. I sort of expected a bit less of that. The other areas, and there are sort of all kinds of areas that sort of go a bit deeper into, because in the book we I've looked at all areas of operations and guest experience, everything from pricing to IoT and access to guest communication, guest experience, pricing, fintech, marketing, all of it really. Looked at kind of how tech is changing all of those aspects. And there are sort of certain things that have kind of come out. And the one that we just talked about is that sort of cultural mind shift that needs to happen for operators to really sort of to see tech as an investment, not cost, is kind of the first one. The fact that it's democratizing hospitality so that small operators, and this is particularly pertinent for the short-term rental space, is you can have, 5 homes or 1 home and use technology to provide a really good experience and have a really good running, functioning, business because of technology. So that sort of democratizing was a sort of a key theme that came through. The other, and this came more from the operators, as you'd understand, than the tech companies, is that innovation's important, but actually stability is more important. So this is more looking at vendors that might be chosen. There are so much innovative startups that are kind of coming out, but actually the operators want the stability. They want to know that the vendor would sticks with them, can grow with them. And then that's another kind of theme, was about looking at tech companies as partners, not actually as vendors. So making sure that, and actually a lot of the vendors came with this perspective as well, making sure that they are working as partners with their customers to make sure that everything is sort of as it should be and they're growing. And then there are other themes, basically nobody is happy with the tech that they have. That was a sort of a core theme from the operators. Other things like the hospitality offering is changing, and we're looking at things like space as being I don't mean space as in our space. I mean, instead of selling room nights, with, especially in the hotel sector, we're looking at selling space as a service rather than, room nights the more traditional way. Other things are like looking at things like attribute-based selling, which means that we're not necessarily, again, just looking at selling a room for a night, but actually the attributes to that room in a way that airlines do. So that's sort of coming in more into the hotel space. Also, the fact that, AI is changing everything. And one of the things that it's changing is that ability to really personalize across operations and guest experience. We're not there yet, but we are, the future is personalization really, and building that one-to-one relationship with customers, with guests. So those are some of the themes that kind of came through it. And there are other, there are plenty of other themes in it as well. But it sort of looks at the whole of hospitality operations as well as the guest experience side of it as well.
Nobody being happy with their tech. I can believe that. Tell us about the most enlightening and memorable interviews that you conducted. Who were they with, and what were the key things that really stuck in your mind?
Every single interview was interesting to me. I love smart people that can tell me things that I don't already know. And I was very sort of conscious of making sure that I had diverse voices as well. So it wasn't just the founder. In some cases I spoke to the COO, or I spoke to, other people within the business to kind of get their take on things. And I think probably the chapters that I found the most interesting were the ones on the guest experience over the operation. So, for instance, talking to Graham Donahue of Sykes, he's in the chapter about marketing and how marketing personalization is changing. Their Book Boost, which is a guest communication software that's in the hotel space, talking about how the CRM is really becoming the sort of the core of the tech stack as well, because of that ability to communicate and personalize with customers. Then spoke to some operators that were just doing some really amazing things for their customer profiles using technology. So one of the companies that I spoke to was Coconut, which is a short-term rental operator in France. And they built their own tech because what they found on the market wasn't quite what they wanted. Now, that's always a really risky choice. Often it goes a little bit pear-shaped, but for them, it's really worked well. And they've been able to scale and then sell it on as well. And even though it was a real investment in the beginning, it is an investment that the leadership feels has paid off. So, and then one of the other ones that I found really interesting is Zoku, the founder of Zoku, which is a operator in the Netherlands. And the CEO was also one of the co-founders of Citizen M, which is, a hotel brand, and this is how they're approaching space in a different way. So instead of selling just room nights, they're looking at hotel rooms, how they can sell it as office space during the day and then a hotel room at night, and using event spaces in a different way. And I just find that, just thinking outside the box, very interesting.
Superb. Yeah, great that you mentioned Graham there. I interviewed him recently for a series that we're working on, and we had a brilliant chat about how the Forge Holiday Group and Sykes are adopting AI, and it was absolutely fascinating. So I'm not surprised that you mentioned Graham. Okay, real talk now for all you hosts out there. You know that moment when your guest messages you again with, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi code?" Or you're staring at 5 different calendars, wondering if you've accidentally double booked the cottage. Yes, we've all been there. That's why here at Host Planet we recommend Hostfully. It's basically your rentals control center. It handles bookings across all the big platforms, syncs your calendars to ensure there are no double bookings, automates guest messages, and even creates these really slick digital guidebooks that stop all the repeat questions. Honestly, it just makes your life easier and keeps your guests happier, helping you achieve those all-important 5-star reviews. And here is a little bonus. If you're a Host Planet listener, you can get $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Just hit the link in the show notes and use the codes PLANET500 for the PMS and HostPlanetGB for the guidebooks. And if you'd like a proper walkthrough, there's also a link to book a demo with Frank Bosey from Hostfully. He will show you how it all works. Less stress, more bookings, sorted with Hostfully. In terms of STR operators and how they're utilizing tech, what are the biggest mistakes that you think that they're making?
So that's always a really interesting question. Firstly, I think it's probably not looking at where the problem is that they need to solve. So thinking a problem is over here, but actually not realizing it's kind of over here. So I think that's probably one of the big mistakes. The other bit is maybe not always understanding the tech that they do already have and how they can utilize it better. So, through the research of the book as well, a lot of the tech companies sort of said they were kind of frustrated because their customers use maybe 20% of the utility of their technology. They're not using it to the full potential. Now that is down to the tech companies to educate better, account management, all that stuff. But I think that is one, it can be either, and then another one is going two ways. It's either I want that next shiny thing, the thing that's going to solve my headaches, or I'm not gonna really look and check and see what else is out there in the market. And one of the kind of the top tips of one of the operators is trialing things, build sandboxes, to trial tech before you start to put it out, within your operation. So those are kind of some of the mistakes that can be made and some of the things to mitigate against that.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned there the tech operators needing to educate their customers. I had an issue with some of my tech recently, and I asked to have a call to run through it to help me out. And the first thing the guy said to me on the call was, "Couldn't you find the video on our website to tell you what to do?" And I was like, "Oh my word!" I was like, "You've put me in a bad mood immediately." I was like, "Well, the reason I did it was X, Y, and Z. I had a good reason for not watching a video, but I just thought." You can't talk to your customers like that. It's it was crazy and a bad experience right from the start. So yeah, I think the tech companies do have a bit to learn from that. So from your vantage point, then obviously leading Abode Worldwide, PR company, you're working with a lot of brands in the STR space. What are the trends that you think are worth watching in 2025 and beyond?
So there are two trends actually, and they're kind of linked. One of them is around looking at, and it's actually quite difficult in short-term rentals because we don't, the repeat booking is a sort of a tricky one. Like, it's not like business travelers that might regularly go to New York and stay in the same kind of hotel. Short-term rental, it's harder. But I think it's looking at things a little bit differently. And so really looking at your customer, your guest, and instead of looking at it as just one transaction that you might be having with them, looking at the lifetime value of that guest. So what is the lifetime value of that guest as you nurture that relationship, for 5 years, 10 years, or whatever it might be. So rather than just seeing like, okay, there's this one booking, and then there might be another one booking, it's really looking at that way. And then that ties into the thing that we don't yet have in short-term rentals, or certainly not successfully, is loyalty. And how can you grow loyalty? And I was at a conference recently, and there were speakers talking about how short-term rentals and hotels think they do loyalty well, but actually loyalty isn't emails. It isn't about sending emails and sending discount codes and those things. It's about building a relationship, and it's about really building that loyalty through a relationship. It's not transactional, which I think is a way that many might approach. Like, it can sometimes be our tendency to look at things in a transactional way rather than in a relational way. And when it comes to customers, the relational way, just like you've just experienced, that wasn't a relational way that you just, when he said, why didn't you watch the video? He's not seeing you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it takes me back to I lived out in Qatar for 10 years and flew a lot with work. And because you're a frequent flyer on Qatar Airways, every time you get on the plane, somebody comes along and gives you a personal welcome. They'll say, hello, hello, James, welcome back. What meal would you like? Da 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 da. And it's just that kind of touch where it escalates. It goes from being you're just a customer to actually, we value you, and thank you for being a loyal customer. So you obviously work with a lot of leading STR tech brands, helping them to kind of cut through and to get that positive PR. What separates, do you think, the brands that cut through and those who don't?
So it's something I think about a lot, actually. And Because there are many really fantastic sort of solutions out there. There's loads of great people kind of leading things. I think that there's a few things, and I honestly think it comes down to leadership. So it's leadership that has a vision, that has a purpose, that absolutely believes in what they're doing and drives it. So that leadership also takes risks and invests in what they're doing, and really kind of goes for it. And sort of it is a little bit like, especially for tech, it's kind of like go big or go home. Like, especially, now there is so much, you have to be out there really, constantly if you want to get to that sort of, to a critical mass point. So I think it's those things that I would say. I'm sure that luck comes in as well, perfect timing, good investors, all of those things, great team, all of those things. But I think it's the quality of the leadership and the vision. And then it's being, brave to be out there in a consistent way. And then, of course, and actually I should have said this a bit first, it's delivering a really good product and putting your customers at the center of that product as well.
When a STR brand approaches you and they say, look, we've got a great product, but we need to cut through, kind of where do you start? And what are the best examples of companies that you've worked with where they really have cut through and they've achieved their initial goals?
Absolutely. Now, I tend not to talk about individual clients of ours, but so I can make it as a sort of a general. And we do work with startups, but our preference at Abode is to work for them to have a minimal viable product and have some traction and have some customers. That they have, that they already have that kind of base, so that it's not just we've got an idea, we've got something going there, and we want to get it out. Like, PR isn't the time to do that. Like, you need to get your marketing function, your full marketing function, right? You need to make sure that you're fit for purpose for customers, all of those things. So we don't typically work with really early stage. However, often it's like if I have a conversation with a founder and they're able to really convince me of what their vision, and I can see that they've got those things, then I it becomes much easier, because it's like, right, totally see, you've got market fit, you've got vision, you're prepared to take risks, you're out there. So we would do, and we've done it, for many companies out in the space, it's that foundational work. It's like, what is it that you need to be known for? What are your kind of core messages? What can you lead the industry on? And then it's that's really doing the strategic work. What are your objectives? Is it that you want to break into a new market? Is it that that you want investment? Is it that you need to sort of cut through through a really tough competitor market? Or have you actually reinvented the wheel on a particular part of the market? Or is it that you're looking for talent? You want to attract the best talent? Like, there's lots of different reasons why companies will want to invest in PR and in their comms. So we look at all that stuff first, and then start positioning them and doing it through all kinds of ways. Some of it seems almost like it's hidden. It's suddenly this company is everywhere. And it's really about building that trust and that credibility and that visibility and brand value in brands. Without it, it's very difficult to cut through.
In a world getting more dominated by AI and large language models like ChatGPT, and potentially ChatGPT and similar models becoming more important than Google, for example, how much more important do you think PR is becoming for brands if they want to cut through?
It's I don't know whether LLMs are becoming more important than Google. I don't know that there's even a question mark about that. And where the LLMs are getting their information from is from trusted sources. And trusted sources means earned media, publications, websites that are not just your own kind of website. So I think it's something like 70% of the citations that come through Google overviews, Perplexity, ChatGPT come from media sources. So and it's not just the media sources, it's about the positioning as well. So it's around, if your brand is being positioned as a tech company for XYZ solution for XYZ audience, or that you're known for thought leadership topics that you talk about in the industry, you are going to be coming up in the search, visibility. So it's vitally important, more so than ever, actually, which is kind of exciting.
Very exciting for the PR space. Okay, then, so what's next for you and Abode Worldwide?
So next is I've actually got, it's working on the book launch. So getting that out there. And then it's having a little bit of hibernation time over the summer before all the big, events and conferences of the autumn. So I will personally be traveling to quite a few events. I speak at quite a few events, so I'll be doing that. And then I have got another book up my sleeves that I'm very excited to kind of start to think about writing. So that's the next step. And for us, the team, we've got a great team, and everyone's just kind of hunkered down doing their stuff and helping our clients, get their names out there. So yeah.
Fantastic. And in terms of getting the book and where people can find you, where should they head?
So if they go to Amazon, it's Tech Enabled Hospitality. They can also just put into Google Tech Enabled Hospitality, and there is several pages to purchase the book. And for me, I am on LinkedIn. I'm always really happy to hear from people, whether it's property managers, tech companies, whoever in the space. I love having conversations with SDR. It's how I learn about what's going on. So I'm always, available. Plus, I will be at various conferences over the autumn time.
Superb. And we'll put your LinkedIn and the Amazon link for the book in the show notes. Okay, then, Jessica, we've got a few questions to finish. Favorite brand in the hospitality space?
So there is one that I like a lot at the moment, and I talked a little bit about loyalty, and it is from the Ennismore Group, which is a group of hotel brands, and it's called Disloyalty, and it's a loyalty program which is a brand in and of itself, which is very, very different from other kinds. It's not points based, it is actually giving discounts and all those things, like free coffees when you go. And it's not about keeping you to one particular hotel chain. It's about the whole, like you can use it across, 20, 30 brands. They're all within Ennismore Group, but it's a really interesting concept, and one that, someone very smart in the short-term rental sector should start to look and develop.
Excellent. Disloyalty sounds very interesting. Individual shout out now. Is there somebody that you'd like to give a shout out to, and why?
So I am going to give it to our mutual friend, Humphrey Bowles. And the reason is he recently did a post about the digital sharecropping on LinkedIn, and he did a talk about it. And, basically the thing is like, the entrepreneurial myth, are you an entrepreneur, or are you working in a job? Do you actually own the assets of your business? And he did this post, and he's got this sort of, he kind of brought to attention this idea, and his talk is excellent if ever you get a chance to watch it. And I think he's just brought to the surface just a very interesting concept for those of us in the short-term rental industry to think about. Now, what I also like about it, and from a PR perspective, is his thought got picked up by a big travel tech publication, Focus.Y. He was quoted in it. I've seen all sorts of really interesting people be commenting on it and taking it further and further. So it's a little bit like a viral moment in STR space. So I think for those several reasons, I would give my shout out to Humphrey.
Great shout out for Humphrey. Yeah, the chat is well worth watching. And by the time this episode comes out, our podcast interview with Humphrey will already be on our channels. And it really is a must listen. I've been reviewing it recently, and it's a really, really great episode. We pick 3 social media clips from every episode that we publish on our platforms. I could have picked about 20 social media clips from Humphrey's episode. It was really, really great, packed with knowledge. Finally then, Jessica, advice to anybody who wants to write a book.
So my short answer is don't do it. It's really hard work.
But you're doing it again.
I am doing it again. I'm a glutton for punishment. I think it's first you have to realize that it's a lot of work. It took a year from planning the researching, doing the researching, actually all the copy editing and the bits that the publisher does. That's a huge undertaking as well. I think it's having an idea that you really want to explore and that you're really curious about, and then having a sort of a structure of how you're going to communicate that idea and those thoughts, basically. So I take that back about don't do it. Absolutely do it. If you've got something that you really want to explore, then absolutely do it.
Superb. Make sure you check it out, everybody, on Amazon, and of course get in touch with Jessica if you want to have a conversation about the STR space. That's something I did when I started out, and Jessica was kind enough to reply and give me 15 minutes of her time. Jessica, real pleasure as ever. Thank you for joining us on the Host Planet podcast.
Thank you, James, very much for having me.
Great to chat to Jessica Gillingham there from Abode Worldwide about her new book, STR Tech and PR in the vacation rentals industry. All right, that's it for today's episode. Remember, this podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Hostfully, which is trusted by short-term rental professionals across the globe. As a Host Planet listener, you get 2 exclusive offers: $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software. Just use the code PLANET500, and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Use the code HostPlanetGB. To grab these deals, click the link in the show notes or head to hostfully.com. For more free education, tips and trends from the STR industry, visit hostplanet.club, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcasts, and download a suite of ebooks for hosts and property managers. That's it for today's episode. Until next time, happy hosting.